Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled and honored to have you here with us this evening for the Mayoral Forum, focused specifically on you, the women of Philadelphia. I'm Catherine Kelton, and it is my honor to serve as the president of the Forum of Executive Women this year. For 45 years, it has been the mission of the Forum to bring together and leverage the influence of professional women to expand the impact and power of women in the workplace and beyond.
What?
I had the privilege last night to see a new documentary on the life of Dr. Bernard C. Watson, a giant of our Philadelphia community, including here at Temple. And he said something that resonated with me. I never wanted to run for elected office, never crossed my mind, but I wanted to have a say, to see what people stood for. And that's why we're here together tonight. This is your chance to have a say and to see what these candidates stand for on the issues that matter to you. Thank you to my forum colleagues and board members who are here tonight, especially Kristen McKenna, our interim executive director, Lauren Christella, chair of our Public Service Leadership Committee, and Dr. Lorena Marshall-Blake, chair of our Forum Ally Committee, for their support and work planning this event. The Forum is so proud to have Women's Way as our Forum Ally this year and to be your co-host this evening. And now I'd like to turn it over to Morgan Robinson, Voter Services Chair at the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia. Morgan.
Replaced with WONK. WONK is an opioid substance.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Morgan Robinson, and I would like to bring greetings on behalf of Melissa Wright, who is our League of Women Voters Philadelphia president, who could not be with us this evening. So the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that has been around for over 100 years. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy by providing nonpartisan voter education, advocating for public policies that strengthen our communities, and fighting against voter suppression. We believe that every citizen has a right to vote and that democracy works best when everyone participates. That's why we work tirelessly to educate voters about their rights and responsibilities and to encourage them to exercise their right to vote. The League of Women Voters is not affiliated with any political party or candidate. We are a grassroots organization made up of people from all walks of life who are committed to making our democracy work for everyone. We believe that every voice should be heard and every vote should count. We work to protect the right to vote. And if you are looking for an amazing way to get involved, we encourage you to continue to be involved in your community, attending events like this, as well as looking out for the League of Women Voters and other things we have coming up. So now I would like to introduce Diane Corman-Levy, Chief Disruptor of Women's Way. Thank you.
That have turned up in two different townships. And police think it's very likely someone caught these.
Thank you, Morgan. Before I just say a few words, I had to say a disclaimer. This event is sponsored by Women's Way. The use of Temple University facilities for this event does not constitute an endorsement by the university. Temple University does not endorse this or any candidate or organization or any position of this or any candidate or any organization in connection with this or any other political campaign or election. Got that out of the way. So yes, I'm Diane Corman-Levy, the Chief Disruptor at Women's Way. We're one of the regions key convener, grant maker, and educator. We were formed in the mid-1970s, where we have hold a unique place in the nation's history as the first umbrella funding federation that was specifically dedicated to issues such as and post-incarceration reentry. Since its founding, Women's Way has raised more than $25 million to improve the lives of women and girls and gender expansive individuals and provide vital support to the agencies that serve them. We at Women's Way deeply believe that to make Philadelphia a thriving city for all its residents, we must center those most impacted by systemic inequities and injustices, which are women of color. Those closest to inequities are closest to the solutions and therefore need to be at the table with policymakers and legislators co-creating solutions. We also know that when we invest in women, everything changes. When we lift women up, we lift families up, we lift communities up, and all society benefits. We are delighted to be in conversation with 2 of the 10 remaining impact the lives and well-being of women and girls. I just want to highlight this. When we decided to conduct this forum many, many weeks ago, we reached out to all the candidates, which at that time were 4 women and 7 men. Of the 7 men, only 2 responded to our request. 1 dropped out. 1 decided not to come today. Of the 4 women, all responded. 1 dropped out of the race, and 1 called me to inform me that she could not make it because she's at a huge event in Washington, D.C. today, and formally apologized for not being here. So I just want to highlight that all the women candidates responded to our request, and especially thank the 2 candidates who are here today who made a choice to be here to discuss these positions on issues that affect women. Because they're all really busy, but they decided to be here. I would like to recognize and thank additional collaborators. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and Every Voice and Every Vote who supported the cost of the reception, live streaming the event, and the translators. And thank you to the Forum of Executive Women, Girls Justice League, and Juvenile Law Center for helping to plan and design tonight's forum. I would now like to introduce my amazing co-pilot and chair of the Women's Way Board, Myra Brown.
Thank you, Diane. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. So I'd like to thank Temple University, my alma mater, for their gracious gesture to host us here tonight in this wonderful space. So thank you, Temple University, Mike, Claire, Deanna, and Jim behind the scenes. Thank you for everything that you do. I'm so proud of the collective efforts of Women's Way and the Forum of Executive Women and the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia and Every Voice, Every Vote. We are presenting this mayoral candidate forum, and we're initiating a discussion around the challenges that impact women throughout Philadelphia. We have demonstrated that women are a force and that when we organize, we can get stuff done. So I'm really proud of that. So it is my extreme pleasure to be able to introduce the woman who is going to be our moderator for this evening's event. Our relationship began over 30 years ago. Wow. When she invited me to a Women's Way event and suggested that I become active with Women's Way. I recall walking into the room, not seeing a lot of people that look like me and saying, not me, not now. Fast forward, as I became more educated about the work of Women's Way, I began to really get involved. Clearly, I've come a long way from that first event. And it's because of her passion, which ignited me, that I stand here today as the chair of the board of Women's Way. We both have come full circle. This woman holds a doctoral degree in education and innovation and leadership. She's a published author of several noted publications and articles, including Don't Tell Me What I Can Do, part of the They Carried Us, the social impact of Philadelphia Black women leaders. She is the founding director of the Urban League of Philadelphia's Leadership Institute, which graduated nearly 500 minority leaders throughout our region. Most of them, I'm sure you know. She is the founding director of the Women's Outreach and Advocacy Center at Community College of Philadelphia. She is of women in community colleges. She has won numerous awards, including the NAACP's 100 Influential Black Women in Philadelphia Award. And in her spare time, she's mentored women like myself. And we are forever grateful to you. It is my honor to introduce as the moderator for tonight's mayoral candidate forum, Dr. Claudia Curry.
Thank you for that introduction, Myra. Yes, we've come a long way. We've come full circle. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome the candidates and thank them for making this investment of their time, which we know is limited right now, in the women and girls of Philadelphia. The city of brotherly love is a majority female city. 53% of our residents identify as female. And so we are eager to hear how our next mayor plans to address the issues that have a disproportionate effect on women: safety, women in leadership, reproductive justice, and economic security. I will introduce our panelists in alphabetical order. First, we have Cherelle Parker. Cherelle served the 9th Council District of Philadelphia City Council from 2016 until 2022, and before that served for a decade in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Prior to that, she worked for former City Councilperson Marion Tasco for 15 years. And last but not least, we have Rebecca Rhynhart. Prior to being elected as the city controller in 2017, Rebecca served as the budget director for Mayor Michael Nutter and chief administrative officer for Mayor Jim Kenney. Prior to that, she worked on Wall Street in public finance. Thank you again. So let's dive in. First, my colleagues from Girls Justice League and the Juvenile Law Center and I will ask a series of questions, and then we will conclude our program with an opportunity to hear from the audience. I will begin with a question to our candidates. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, Philadelphia families are forced to spend a larger portion of their pay on childcare than in any other Pennsylvania county. And it's likely affecting the number of women in the workforce, in addition to contributing to our wage gap. What would be your approach to addressing pay parity in the workplace, including by reducing the burdens that fall disproportionately on women?
Okay.
Yes.
Let me start by saying a special thank you to each of you for being here. Now, I just want to know who's the timekeeper here? Okay, so I should just look over to the side. Okay, do we know how much time we have to respond? Okay, all right. We've been accustomed to seeing some time, so you're gonna have to, like, I'm gonna have to get used to this, okay? All right, let me start by saying a special thank you to the forum, to the League of Women Voters, and to Women's Way. In particular, Women's Way did something super huge in my life. In 1990, I was the winner of a citywide Women's History Month oratorical competition sponsored by the School District of Philadelphia, along with Women's Way. And my participation in that competition served as my informal introduction to Philadelphia. And so I wanted to get that on the record. As it relates to pay equity and child care, let me note that we have to look at child care as an economic development issue. That is why when you hear me talk about how we need to structure our delivery of public education today, it includes childcare. And so with that in mind, I've proposed that we start the school day at 7:30 in the morning across the board, with schools closing no earlier than 6 p.m. Why is this essential? I send my son Langston to school. I can drop him off as early as 7:30 in the morning because Langston understands that his mother is not a banker, and I have to get downtown sometimes at 8 o'clock or 8:15 for a meeting, which means I'll need a half an hour to 45 minutes. Well, that's called the early bird special, and you have to pay a special fee for that. Langston knows that I don't leave work at 3 o'clock, and I need him to stay in the aftercare program, the enrichment program. It is very much available until 6 o'clock, but I have to pay for that. So what about the mothers and even fathers who are raising children, trying to get to work and don't have access to the income to pay for those services? So my plan takes into consideration those who were born like me, and I was not born into what I refer to as the Cosby family and or Leave It to Beaver family. Some of you have never even heard of Wally and the Beav. Nevertheless, for those who are products of kinship care, being raised by someone other than their biological parents, and mothers and fathers who simply need to get to work. We can't tell you that we want to put you on a path to self-sufficiency, but we don't embrace very pragmatic policy making and decisions without including thoughts like scheduling. So we will do this, and despite our traditional academic day in public school, every industry growing in the city of Philadelphia, every aftercare enrichment program being offered at many of our private schools, we will make them available at no cost, again, before school and after school. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. My name is Rebecca Rhynhart, and I'm running for mayor because I believe that I'm the right person to lead our city forward in this critical moment. to address the issue that was asked on pay equity and childcare. These issues are often fall to the woman of the household. Look, I am a mom. My daughter is 13 years old, and I have dealt with these issues, throughout my career. What we need to do is, one, push for pay equity, absolutely, and two, do what we can do to help with childcare. So on pay equity, as city controller, every year I added to the departmental audit a review of each city department's pay, which showed inequity among city employees. So this is something that the city needs to deal with, not just private employers in the area. And as mayor, I would lead a focus on a women's agenda, because a women's agenda is a community agenda, is a city agenda. Because women are community, right? I mean, if we're not protecting women and advancing women, the city is not going to advance. One, I would lead on pay equity and working within the city departments to identify where the issues are evolving and assist in moving the needle in that regard. Childcare. There are certain tax credits, that earned income tax credit for childcare, other programs that I would work as a city to advance people's understanding of, so that people are applying and getting the tax credits that they can apply for. And also pre-K. I supported the soda tax because I supported the 3 programs that it was intended to fund: pre-K, community schools, and improvements to parks, to rec facilities, rebuild. But the work of my office showed that less than half of that money has gone to those 3 things. And that's not right. And as mayor, I'll make sure that the money's going where it's supposed to be going, and that we are increasing the number of pre-K seats so that the soda tax is being used for what it was envisioned and told to the people it was being used. So I will work in partnership with the state and federal government on childcare issues, and be an advocate for women in our city every day as the 100th mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have a question from the Girls Justice League.
Hi, my name is Liana Lindsay. I'm with Girls Justice League. My question is, what is your plan to address the growing level of gun violence in Philadelphia, and how do you plan to work alongside the communities most impacted?
Do you want me to start?
If you
Okay.
like, yes.
Sure. So on gun violence, I have put out a complete plan on my website, RebeccaForPhiladelphia.com, but I'll go into the specifics here, which is that I've done work around gun violence and what works to tackle the crisis since 2019 as city controller. And I also worked with community activists on the ground in North and West Philly, Daryl Schuler and others, to advance this. What has been found to work, and this is what I would implement as mayor. There are 3 intervention strategies: group violence intervention, cognitive behavior therapy, and cure violence, that when implemented together are proven to reduce the homicide rate significantly. These are programs that offer a way out for those most likely to shoot or be shot in the next year, and offer them a way out, employment and services, with consequences if they don't take that. Oakland's reduction in homicide was 50% over 5 years, because the majority of the young men, mostly young men, want that way out. And Oakland had a 27% reduction in the homicide rate. In addition to that, I would pull together the DA and the police commissioner and to get on the same page with illegal guns. The police have doubled the number of arrests for illegal carry over the last 5 years, while the conviction rate by the DA has gone down from 65 to 42%. The DA says it's because the police cases aren't good enough. As mayor, I would pull them together in the same room to say, we need to get on the same page to get these guns off the street. And then, of course, I would tackle the root cause of the problem of gun violence, which is a lack of opportunity through fixing the school system and creating job pathways for good paying jobs. This is the number one issue facing our city. And I've committed to reducing the homicide rate in half by the end of my first term. Thank you.
Thank you. Cherelle?
As someone who has lived a life closest to the people feeling the most pain in this city, and as a person who has had to work at both the state and local level in government, delivering resources for our city in very highly charged political environments, I am proud to share with you that I introduced a comprehensive neighborhood safety and community policing plan when people told me that I could be canceled for doing so, because this comprehensive plan included some elements that were not popular. The first of them is called community policing. It is a concept of an officer being out of his or her car, walking neighborhoods, riding bikes, getting to know the communities that they are sworn to protect and serve as a way to begin to rebuild trust between law enforcement and our communities. It is also a way that we will ensure that we work on the recruitment of diversifying Philadelphia's police force so that it really does reflect what Philadelphia's population looks like. In addition to that, the plan called for addressing quality of life issues like the cleaning and greening of neighborhoods. It is so easy to hear people generally, particularly after the murder of Officer George Floyd during the civil unrest, people shouted the slogan that Black Lives Matter, but it was very hard for Black and brown people to believe when they walked outside of their houses and on the streets and neighborhoods where they were likely to see most of this violence taking place. In addition to that, as it relates to cleaning, I introduced a comprehensive plan called PHL TCB that was modeled after what we see in the Center City District. You see ambassadors cleaning up what trash people dropped. I had a novel idea that if it was good for Center City, how about we do it in neighborhoods? We were told we didn't have the tax base, but the worst thing in the world that you could tell a Black woman like me who comes from humble beginnings, it's what I can't do. And so we established it not only in the district that I represented, but across the city. The final issue is access to economic opportunity. Every industry growing in the city of Philadelphia, from life sciences and biotech, along with the hydrogen hub that we are in line to receive as a result of a regional cooperative agreement with New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania to create over 30,000 clean energy jobs, really shaping the first formal alliance between labor and the environment, the first blue-green alliance we have never seen. So it will take a very much a comprehensive approach. Access to economic opportunity and addressing poverty is at the foundation, increasing home ownership and not having a savior complex and thinking that you will engage in what I call, I know what's best for you's people policy making, like proffering solutions to the opioid crisis, such as safe injection sites, when you haven't had a conversation with the people who are living that in that community on a daily basis. So our approach was very ground up. It was very community centric, and it was formed with a pragmatic response to policing and government and safe and healthy communities in mind.
Thank you. We have another question for the candidates. Women's Way operates using a definition of wealth pioneered by researcher Ann Price, which suggests that wealth means families, networks, and communities are healthy, spiritually whole, and contributing. What is the single most important thing you can do to ensure communities have access to this type of wealth? And we'll begin with you, Cherelle.
Putting people on a path to self-sufficiency. When I grew up in my working class, blue collar, Northwest Philadelphia neighborhood, my grandparents who migrated here from the South were super proud to be owners of the home that we lived in. That is the foundation for building generational wealth, particularly for Black and brown communities. And when you are born like me, a Black woman born and having to function and live at the intersection of both race and gender, you're never handpicked for anything. If anything, you actually have to survive and thrive in spite of the fact that you are Black and a woman. So for me, giving people access to an opportunity, that means a quality public education. That means access to an undergraduate education. I'm a first generation college graduate in my family, proud graduate of Lincoln University, first historically Black degree granting institution of higher learning in the nation, first Ivy League graduate in my family from the University of Pennsylvania, Eisenhower Fellow, ACYPL Fellow. All of these opportunities are what gave me access to a tool that would allow me to be able to take care of my family, receive health care, retirement security, and do it without depending on government. That's what we need to do. Grow entrepreneurship, support home ownership, and support putting people on the path to self-sufficiency and not engaging in supporting programs that keeps them sort of feeding off of government and not being able to take care of themselves. The first thing you learn about poverty when you live it is that the people who live it hate it. And they don't want to have to need help. So how do we put people on a path to self-sufficiency so they're going to bed every night and waking up in the morning with a purpose?
Thank you. Rebecca?
So to create the wealth the community wealth that you're talking about and that our city needs, we have to create safety in all of our neighborhoods and opportunity in all of our neighborhoods, and then work on building wealth. So first, we talked about safety. As mayor, I also will work on opportunity through fixing our school system and creating job pathways from our poorest neighborhoods to good paying jobs. On education, my daughter is in 7th grade in the public school system here in Philadelphia, and every child deserves a good school in a safe school building. As mayor, I'll appoint a school board that shares my vision for a true transformation of all of our schools so that we have good neighborhood schools and we increase the number of quality seats, whether they are traditional public or charter. Parents can't wait for a good seat to send their kids to, a good school, and I will work every day to improve the schools through accountability at the local level, making sure the superintendent, the school board, parents, educators, and others are all aligned on metrics and moving the needle on improvement. And I also will make it my top priority with the state to get more money for our schools, because we're going to need state and federal money to fund the $5 billion that our school buildings need to improve and repair and replace those buildings. On job opportunity, we have growing sectors such as the life sciences in our city, but we're not connecting people that need jobs with the skills to get those jobs. And as mayor, I will work to create those workforce pathways so that people can learn the skills to get the jobs, such as with Spark Therapeutics. Spark is creating a huge new building in West Philly. They're going to need all types of jobs to be filled, types of good careers. And we need to make sure that our residents are ready for those jobs and can benefit from the growth so that we have one economy in our city, not two. And then also we need to focus in on wealth, increasing Black wealth in our city. And the way to do that is through helping grow Black-owned businesses, being very intentional and strategic in helping Black business grow, and also increasing Black home ownership. I have put forth plans homeowners to increase Black home ownership. This is something that goes back decades and decades, as we all know, is the history of the racist redlining of our government. And we need to be proactive and very intentional to fix that. All of that, to me, is included in the definition of wealth.
Thank you. We will now have a question from the Juvenile Law Center Youth Advocacy Program.
Hi, my name is Dwayne Price, and my question to you both is, how will you work to raise and address the need for unemployment, assist, and housing security for youth? What strategies or solutions will you implement to address housing insecurity and unemployment for youth who have aged out of foster care and formerly incarcerated youth who have been under the care of the city, or you who are at risk of entering the system?
I have proffered a plan to build 30,000 new units of affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia with students in the school district of Philadelphia, along with underemployed and unemployed Philadelphians being trained by the building trades to build the schools that we need to build and not have a debate about remediating asbestos and lead. They need to be demolished and rebuilt. And full disclosure, the $5 billion cost is a number that State Senator Vince Hughes attributed to the rebuilding of our aging school stock pre-pandemic. That number is more like $8 billion now, and it will require an intergovernmental approach in order to address it. But we need to find a way to ensure that the training to acquire the skills necessary to do the work is being done by the people we want to serve in our city. As it relates to the building of the new, the one thing you won't get from me is anyone talking about building a highly dense and concentrated development of low to moderate income residents in one section. Usually people trying to solve for problems that they've never lived, they would think that something like that would be a good solution for the constituency you just described. But I would argue to you that there's a model off of Ridge Avenue called the Western model that includes public housing, other traditional row homes, singles and twins, and then extremely beautiful singles where wealthy people have decided, I don't have to live in the main line. I'm choosing Philadelphia. When you drive through that environment, every amenity in that community is great. The quality of the housing is great, although different based on your income. But the people who are there, they get an opportunity to learn from each other and live together. And so that is the model I would support for that constituency in foster care and moving from place to place and then aging out of a system and not know where you can go in order to get assistance to thrive and survive. We need special supports through organizations like the Urban Affairs Coalition, supporting any age-out young adult programs that would allow them to get an apartment, to get access to that workforce development training if they don't have a diploma. And unfortunately, I'll be paying Penn for my student loan debt until I'm dead because I didn't have someone else paying for it for me. But there are some people who'll say, Cherelle Parker, that's not my path. We don't have the industrial jobs we used to have, factory jobs like Tasty Cake, the Bud Plant, Nabisco. So we have to make sure we create those pathways. That is something that we will do in government.
Thank you.
So the issues that you raise, unemployment among our young people, issues with transition back from reentry are significant ones. And we need to look at it from a few different fronts. So on unemployment, especially among those returning citizens, we need to look at innovative approaches. And when I was city controller and I was working with anti-violence activists in West Philly, an organization called Put It Down, they needed a job program to pull the young men that they were working with out of that life of violence. And I connected them with an organization called HopeWorks. HopeWorks has an entity in Camden, just opened one in North Philly. What they do is they train train people, Philadelphians, no matter what their background is or what their criminal record is, for tech jobs and then place them in tech companies. They have an amazing track record, and we need to do more of those partnerships. And as mayor, I would amplify those types of partnerships so that we are directly connecting people that want to get a career and a skill with that skill set and that job. In terms of housing security, I've put forth a housing plan and housing policy utilizing the city-owned 8,500 vacant properties and lots. The city has 8,500. And as controller, I had someone in my office map those properties, and I drove through some streets. And the city owns blocks of dilapidated housing, which is unbelievable when the city also has an affordable housing need. So as mayor, I will use that housing stock to work on a citywide housing plan in conjunction with the council members. And then we also have to work on clearing criminal records, expunging records, making our young people be able to get that job. And those are the types of things that I would advance as mayor.
Thank you. With the rolling back of Roe versus Wade, how will you work to ensure all women, including young people, can safely access reproductive services in Philadelphia? Rebecca, do you want to go first?
Sure. So this is an incredibly important topic. Reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, the ability to have control over your body as a woman is something that is sacrosanct to me and to women overall. And I will work to make sure that women in Philadelphia have the ability to make a decision of whether or not they want to carry their pregnancy to term. That is something that I will adamantly defend and make sure that women have access in the city of Philadelphia. We cannot go backwards. Our country has moved backwards enough, too much. And here in Philadelphia, no, we are not going to. And I am going to fight every day for that right through our health centers and through the platform of the mayor, the bully pulpit of the mayor. I will work on that every single day in conjunction with the governor, in conjunction with the president, to make sure that women have that freedom here in Philadelphia.
Thank you. Cherelle?
As I've stated on numerous occasions, we should use every tool available in the toolbox to ensure that women from all walks of life have access to the opportunity to determine what happens with their reproductive choice. For me, noting that I would use the convening power of the mayor's office to work in partnership with our federal, state, and local government to ensure that this occurs is essential. But this is also about class and socioeconomic status for me. And it is that way because if you are wealthy, you would be able to go to another country if you decided you wanted to terminate a pregnancy for whatever reason. And we've seen it happen on a number of occasions. But for women who don't have that economic luxury, many of them, particularly in Black and Brown communities, have historically had to turn to hangars and alleys. And having a conversation out loud about that ugly history and that ugly truth is something that we will continue to do as we work to advocate for this policy to be codified, because we can't give up on our legislative advocacy as well. But we will also use our city's health department along with partnership with our medical institutions. I was so proud of physicians at Penn, at Jeff and Pennsylvania, who really stood strong while we were fighting this battle, and the battle continues. And we need to continue to educate Philadelphians to see that this is something that is important, and it's going to take a unified voice in order to address it.
Thank you. We will now have a question from the Juvenile Law Center.
How will you work to ensure the city budget reflects the needs of the communities and funding is allocated to address the inequalities Philadelphians face every day?
I love that question. Budgets are a moral document. I served for years on the Appropriations Committee in Harrisburg, having to work in a bipartisan manner to get our budget passed. At that time, it was about $34 to $35 billion plus. And we'll do the same here in the city of Philadelphia. One of the things that I have affirmed that I will enact is I will have a mayor's community council in every council district in the city. And you all know that we have 10. It will be comprised of civic leaders, block captains, small business owners, faith-based leaders who are residents of that particular region. And as the mayor, I will talk to them in advance prior to proposing our budget. And then once we've introduced that budget, we will work with the mayor's community councils in neighborhoods across the city to ensure that their voices are heard while they'll also work with their district council people. I want to give you an example of why. We have a major challenge in Philadelphia associated with homelessness and the opioid crisis. And one of the things that have been proposed as a solution to addressing the opioid crisis has been something called safe injection sites. Idea that many have said that has worked extremely well in Canada, but is being proposed here in the city of Philadelphia. Well, residents in the neighborhoods where those safe injection sites were being proposed stood firmly to say, no, not here. But instead of listening to the residents and hearing their concerns, elected officials decided to engage in what I know what's best for you's people policy making. And they decided that these communities like Kensington and South Philadelphia should live with these decisions because, after all, they know what's best. We won't do that during the budget process. From housing to policing, to mental and behavioral health, to homelessness, housing security, we will make sure that the community has a voice in our budget process. And you can't do it campaigning door to door. You have to develop a systemic structural process that will include the voices of the people. And that's what the Mayor's Community Council will do for every department within the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yes. Thank you for that question. I was the city's budget director for 5 years, so I know the budget of the city inside and out. I also know that it is about priorities. And when a mayor would call me and say, I need to find 3 million for something, then it was my job to find 3 million for something. I then decided to run for office to have an independent voice and to truly make this city work. And the way I look at it is that the budget and the operations need to be laser focused on creating true equity. And when I say that, what I mean is that my work as city controller showed how much inequity there is in service delivery. So trash collection, for example, is 93% on time, Center City and Northeast Philly. While in Northwest and Southwest, it's 65 to 75% on time. That's not right. And as a city, we need to make sure that the budget and the operations are fixed so that we are giving each neighborhood great service and giving the neighborhoods what they need. And I have worked by creating community councils in the past. My work in the controller's office was guided by community councils in the investigation into the civil unrest after George Floyd was murdered, into the police audit. My view is we have to get people with very different views around the table. On the police audit, on my community council, I had retired police detectives. I had activists on the far left. I had people that lived in every community in the city to talk together about what policing is to them and what's wrong with it right now. And that's the way that I'll lead as mayor, the budget and operations together to truly fix how this city operates.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How will you use your leadership to address gender equity and racial equity in the city of Philadelphia? Is there a commitment to ensure appointed staff reflect the diversity of Philadelphia with a focus on Black and brown women and our trans siblings? Rebecca, do you want to?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. This is something that I prioritized as an elected official as city controller in my leadership team. Very diverse in terms of women and also racially. My view is we need to have diversity of race, gender, ethnicity, neighborhood in order to have the best decision making for our city. Leadership and the city workforce must look like the city and must be representative of it. And I would work towards that. And as city controller, when we expanded recruitment to HBCUs, and we got 50% of our incoming auditor classes were African American. When we noticed that the diversity was falling off in the supervisor role, we worked with the union to figure out what was the problem. And we realized that the problem was how the CPA exam was paid for, that we required employees to pay up front and then get reimbursed. Well, we switched it, okay, so that the city paid up front, and that began to increase diversity right away. And that's what we need to do across our city, is identify the points of where the problem is and increase gender and racial diversity in the city workforce. We must do that.
Thank you. Cherelle?
I am a certified secondary English teacher by profession, and James Baldwin, renowned civil rights activist and author, was given an interview in the 1960s about civil rights, and a reporter told him that mainstream America cares about civil rights too. And James Baldwin very brilliantly responded, "I can't believe what you say because I see what you do." For all of the candidates who are running for public office, and we've done about probably 50 of these forums by now, people can say a whole lot of things, but it's important for you to do your homework and check the record, because the message changes sometimes depending on the audience. Let me just say that we passed pay equity in the city of Philadelphia. We did it in January 2017, Philly Wage Equity Ordinance, thanks to my good friend Bill Greenlee, former council member, an enlightened gentleman. So you can't ask women about their prior salary when they're trying to apply for another position. But because I, again, have lived a life at the intersection of race and gender, and I know what it is like to be marginalized, to be the most qualified, to be the most informed, but not get access to the opportunity because of race and because of gender. And because of that, everything that we do in the city, if you use the piece of legislation I've already introduced called the Transparency in Business Act, which pulls back the layers on firms that benefit from doing business with the city so we can see what they really look like. In addition to that, we need to do it for the city of Philadelphia. In addition to that, I want you all to really think about looking at the history of Philadelphia departments, particularly as it relates to Black women. How many of them have been allowed to successfully thrive, acquire the mentorship and training needed versus those who become fall ladies for a number of reasons, using a litmus test and metric that is not applied to any other constituency. I think of Rashia Johnson, our former treasurer, and another African-American woman who was a staffer in the controller's office. If you get a chance, please Google the articles for your information.
I'm sorry, I don't. really understand. Rashida Johnson didn't work for me.
Excuse me, I didn't say.
Well, you said she was a staffer in the
No,
controller's
excuse
office.
me, I never said. I said Rashida Johnson, our former treasurer,
Right.
and another African-American woman
Yes.
who used to work another and
Okay,
another.
it wasn't clear. I just wanted to make sure that
Okay,
this wasn't clear.
that's
Thank-
fine, but I never
Okay.
said the former treasurer worked for the controller. She was the treasurer in her own right.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. The outgoing mayor was a member of a network known as Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and advocated for a universal basic income to ensure that all Philadelphians have an income floor. You may also be familiar with the Philly Joy Bank, a pilot program launching in 2024 that will offer basic income to pregnant Philadelphians to improve birth outcomes. How will you demonstrate your commitment to universal basic income, this important strategy for economic well-being and wealth building?
I have not done any time value of money evaluations and or thoroughly reviewed any data that affirmed how we could afford such a plan, but it is very much something that I'm interested in exploring with local, state, and federal government support. But what I can tell you I'll do is I will support an increase in Philadelphia in the Commonwealth's minimum wage that is not for 15. The fight for 15 has been going on for so many years that according to MIT's living wage calculator, that fight now is about $17.53. And so I am proud to have the skills to not tell you about what I will do in the future, but the demonstrable skills necessary to ensure that with Josh Shapiro as our new governor, Democrat, new leadership, history-making woman, Speaker of the House in Harrisburg, along with strong working relationships and ties with our Republican colleagues, that I do think now we can find a way to reach a happy medium and much needed compromise and increasing Philadelphia's minimum wage to a living wage. We would also do so with the private sector and the philanthropic community as our partners. And we would actually call on each of you. Women's Way, for example, in our advocacy. And I'm proud that that is something that I have already done and demonstrated the ability to employ in successfully addressing issues in our city.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yes. So basic income was actually something that I recommended as part of my American Rescue Plan proposal that I did as city controller when the city received $1.4 billion from the federal government. The huge opportunity of which there is a good portion remaining of that today. But I put forth a plan on how best to use that money in 2021. And on fighting poverty, one of the best ways that has been found to fight poverty in the short term is through a basic income. And because it addresses housing insecurity and food insecurity immediately so that people can start to address the bigger issues to build their life and build their career. So I proposed putting $18 million of the $1.4 billion towards a basic income pilot. This is something that LA has done and other cities have done to see how well it works to alleviate the poverty for the people in deepest poverty in our city. It is something I would want to consider doing as mayor because it has succeeded in other places. And also we need to address though the root cause of the poverty and truly lift people up in our city so that we can have community health and careers and family well-being. And that's all part of my anti-poverty plan for economic development and growth.
Thank you. We will now have a question from the Girls Justice League. Hi.
Hi, my name is Layla Lindsay. I'm with the Girls Justice League. Generosity Philly just published an article entitled Tokenism, the State of Youth Leadership in Philadelphia. What is your plan to make sure that young people have a real seat at the table?
Excellent. One of the things that you heard me reference earlier was a mayor's community council. And as a part of that mayor's community council, we will be intentional about ensuring that there is very much a youth focus. If you want to see some of the most interesting meetings about the reduction of gun violence in the city of Philadelphia, you should see a meeting geared to that topic with all people who are old like me, age 50 and older. And you say, where are the young people who are being directly impacted by the violence, and why are we not listening to their voices in the room? So we have to be very intentional about building systemic ways where we authentically can hear the voices of young people. That includes the Mayor's Youth Commission, and not sort of as a symbolic gesture. So we have to make it standard operating procedure that within the school district, that commission, my mayor's community council, we will have a presence of the voices of youth from all walks of life. But I want to go back to this issue about, proposals that are being proffered without sustainable resources. It is easy to talk about what you will propose with sort of, faulty math and pilots, but that is usually what we do when we talk about, addressing complex issues associated with people who are living in poverty. And I always want you to ask, in the poorest big city in the nation, whatever you say that you want to pay for, the question I hope you will ask is, what taxes will you raise and what services will you cut to ensure that it is recurring revenue and it is sustainable? You can't just proffer great ideas that sound really nice without a sustainable way to pay for them. And I really want you to begin to use some sort of litmus test to make a decision on how you will compare and contrast who's proffering what.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes. So on the question of bringing youth to the table, absolutely, youth will be at the table. In my decision making, there's the Youth Commission, and also we need to make that more robust. We need to make sure that youth's voices are heard in all of the issues and solutions that our city is making. Gun violence impacts youth tremendously. Gun violence, other issues impact youth. Education, they need to be part of the solution on education. We need to make sure that youth are brought to the table, and that's what will happen with me as mayor. And, I do want to be clear on the issue of how to fund things, though, since Cherelle brought it up again, that when I talk about the basic income pilot, that's $18 million from the 1.4 billion. I know the numbers of this budget. I know what's realistic. I know what we can fund. I know what we need to go to the state and other places to get the money for. And my proposals are realistic and they're bold. And that's what we need in our next mayor. Someone who is realistic and bold at the same time.
Thank you. I would like to turn it over to the audience now to hear what is on the mind of the voters. Upon registration for tonight's event, each attendee was asked to submit a question, and we've chosen a few to highlight. Tamara Cobb, could you please stand and ask your question?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamara Cobb. I'm a lifelong resident of Philadelphia. I live and work in North Philadelphia. Okay. So we asked our community members the following question. What should the mayor do to rebuild the trust and faith in our city government? Here is what they told us. One community member said, open town halls for assessment and feedback of critical areas of concern, especially in the poorest communities. Improve our school system and expand and support community-based health centers. Another community member said, they want a mayor to do what they say they will do and mean what they say. They want the mayor to get rid of corruption in city government and make human-centered decisions regarding new development and renewal development. We also heard from our community that they want the next mayor to listen, be clear about goals, and communicate progress, and be able to pivot when the unplanned and unexpected happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Our candidates, you have 1 minute to respond to that question, if you so choose.
I think it was a great response. I also think that my plan to make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, and greenest big city in the nation that provides access to economic opportunity for all takes that into consideration. The town halls, along with, they want a mayor to do what they say they will do. That's extremely important, and why people have lost faith and hope in government, because they don't see their tax dollars at work in their neighborhood. So I'm there, listen, and also to control for black swan effects like civil unrest along with the pandemic and the water crisis we just faced. Philadelphia, we are a gritty city. We can address problems. We just want a mayor to be honest and transparent about it and to communicate with us. So I agree wholeheartedly. And a Parker administration, you can count on transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I think that those are great solutions. As mayor, I will emphasize transparency and standing up for what's right. As city controller, I released every payment that the controller's office made in our office in a way that was understandable to the public. New York City has New York City checkbook, where they put out every single payment that the city makes. That's what I'll do with the city of Philadelphia. Taxpayers deserve to know how their money is being spent. And I've stood up for what's right, and I've gotten into some political fights for that. But the people need a government that speaks honestly to them and that works for them every day. And that's the mayor that I'll be.
Thank you. Thank you again, Tamara. And now Christina San, your question, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina San, and I'm part of the Women's Way Change the Narrative Fellowship. I'm 18. I live in Northeast Philadelphia, and I currently attend Community College of Philadelphia, where I'm an art and design major. And I'm actually pretty close to finishing my associate's degree. I graduate in the fall. So we asked our community members the following question, and here's what they said. What do you need from your leaders in local government? One community member said to be accessible to citizens. And another community member mentioned that they want leaders to actually meet with us instead of just meeting with those the government considers important or considers leaders. Someone else also said that they need leaders to not just lead, but to be decisive, take action, take responsibility, demonstrate empathy, and be a unifying force for good. As for me, my answer to this question is this. I want my local leaders to be champions of equitable education, hard on big corporations, and unapologetically pro-choice and pro-LGBTQ+. Everyone knows, if you've been keeping up with the news, that nationwide, abortion care and trans people are under attack. And it feels suffocating going on social media and finding out that some other state, some other city has passed or is trying to pass anti-trans and anti-choice legislation. And I know you've already kind of addressed that, but I'll say it anyway. I want the leaders of my city to look at me and everyone else in the eye and say that Philadelphia will protect abortion rights and trans individuals.
Thank you. And our candidates, you have 1 minute to respond.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I love what you say. Philadelphia is a city that will protect abortion rights and LGBT and transgender rights. Absolutely. Under my leadership, that's what makes Philly great, is our inclusivity, our diversity, our arts and culture, everything about us, and about making each person feel good about who they are. That is Philly. Okay. And as mayor, I will be a champion of that every single day and make sure people are their voices are heard. Their voices are heard, and the city works for everyone here.
Thank you.
Under Parker administration. Absolutely, yes. And thank you for the courage you displayed here today. The idea of being accessible and meeting with us, right? No buffer and or middle person, but willing to have a conversation to engage with every constituency in the city because their voices have value is essential. Unifying Philadelphia. How essential. I've watched people in our city attempt to use race, sex, class, zip code, geography, and sexual orientation as tools to divide us. But that is the beauty of our city, and that is what makes us great. In a Parker administration, it will be obvious because that will be how our administration will look, and it is how we will govern in the city. And thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you, Christina. And lastly, India Porter.
Hi, my name is India Porter. I live in West Philadelphia, and I currently work as a program coordinator and the executive leadership fellow for Girls Justice League. We're a gender justice nonprofit that is youth-led here in Philadelphia. We asked our community members the following question: what do you think an incoming mayor needs to understand to lead the city effectively? Here's what they told us. One community member said, the incoming mayor needs to understand how to work effectively with city council members, police commissioners, and leaders of various city departments to get stuff done. The incoming mayor also needs to understand that it's not about you, it's about serving the diverse needs of the residents of this city. Another community member said, there are great disparities in Philadelphia. Wealth, gender, education, housing, employment opportunities, access to healthcare, and other services. In some ways, Philadelphia is thriving, but with a significant percentage of poverty in the city, especially among women and children, we cannot be a great city. We need to address poverty, affordable housing, education, and crime if we want to continue to thrive. As for me, my answer to this question is, I think the upcoming mayor needs to understand that many young folks, myself included, kind of believe left wing, right wing, it's all the same bird. Many of us are fed up because we watched you, our political leaders, cut funding for social programs and shutter safe spaces like libraries and community centers. And in the same breath, you take six-figure salaries and give hundreds of millions of dollars to cops. As a Black woman, I want the upcoming mayor to not just thank me for showing up and voting, but then to center us and other marginalized folks in progressive policies.
Thank you, India.
Excellent.
Candidates,
Excellent.
you have 1 minute to respond.
Your turn.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And there is a lot there, you know, I ran for office first in 2017 because I wanted to change our city government to truly make it work after close to a decade working for the city. And that type of change is what I'm driving for as mayor, to truly make city government work for people across our entire city. So I couldn't agree with that more. As chief administrative officer of the city, I had 1,000 employees reporting to me, the back office function of the city, and managed a union workforce and got things done. And I'll use that knowledge and experience to get things done from the first day of my administration. But I hear you on what you're saying, and we have to make things work in government much better than the way they're working right now for people to have faith that government is truly working for them. We have to restore the trust, and that requires work, and that's why I'm running. So I look forward to building that trust.
Thank you.
I agree. I think the only way you make Philadelphians believers again is that you show them. If my life matters and if my neighborhood matters, then show me by allowing it to be safe, allowing it to be clean and green, and make sure that everyone in my community, even those who are not born into wealth, that they have access to economic opportunities to be put on a path to self-sufficiency, not where you think you are giving them something and and then claiming victory, but you give them the tools to take care of themselves. When you mentioned you have to work with the legislative body, I'm proud to have already had that experience. And that's why I've said to people, I'm not a departmental manager and or an auditor. I'm a leader who is responsible for getting things done, and for supporting small businesses is Power Up Your Business. For cleaner streets, it's PHL, taking care of business, and to support early childhood education is PHL, pre-K. And so it makes me feel good when we deliver. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our program this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates again for spending your valuable campaign time with us this evening to discuss the critical topics of safety, reproductive justice, women in leadership, and economic self-sufficiency for the women and girls of Philadelphia. This great city requires a mayor who prioritizes the basic needs of both its vulnerable and majority populations, and our women and girls deserve to be heard. And thank you to our host and organizers, Women's Way and the Forum of Executive Women, the League of Women Voters, and Every Voice, Every Vote. And thanks to the Girls Justice League and Juvenile Law Center for joining us today. And thank you, our audience here and online, for joining us and participating in this civic dialogue and bringing your experience, your expertise, and your voice to the table. Have a great evening, and above all things, do not forget to vote. Thank you.